everyone. I, Purabi Mishra, a UG second year student of the School of Communications XIM University, welcome everyone back after the energizing and rejuvenating lunch break. As we proceed towards the third session of this eventful day, our discussion on exploring the mediascape in the age of consumer revolution will go forward with an in-depth exchange on script writing. As said by one of the greatest filmmakers that the world has ever produced, Alfred Hitchcock, to make a great film, you only need three things: a great script, and a great script. Script writing or screenwriting is basically the process of writing stories in the screenplay medium. It includes writing all the movements, expressions, dialogues, backdrop, etc. of each character and the situation. It is considered to be one of the first and most important steps that leads to a good production. To explain and discuss about this vast domain of the media industry, we are today joined by Ms. Pooja Tolani, a very talented contemporary writer who was part of the writer's room for Sacred Games Season 2 and has also co-written Verdict for Alt Balaji. She is also a part of fiction writing and reality TV show writing like the Masterchef India and Savdhaan India. Ms. Tolani will today be talking about bending the narrative, exploring script writing. I would now like to call upon Ms. Trina Mukherjee from Master's final year to please proceed further with the event.
Thank you, Purabi. A very good afternoon to everyone here with us today. This is Trina Mukherjee, and I will be your host for the session. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome our guest speaker, Ms. Pooja Tolani, for the session on Bending the Narrative, Exploring Script Writing. Ma'am, thank you for joining us. Ms. Tolani is a contemporary screenwriter who was part of the Writer's Room for Sacred Games Season 2. An alumna from the Film and Television Institute of India, Pune, in screenwriting, she has co-written Verdict for Alt Balaji and has contributed to fiction and reality TV shows such as Masterchef India, Savdhaan India, and has also worked on a biographical series for Prakash Jha Productions. She was awarded the Asia Society New Voices Fellowship for Screenwriters, funded by the Time Wagner Foundation, and has also previously written feature film screenplays for YRF and Endemol. She is currently in the writer's room for an upcoming Amazon series being showrun by Mr. Vishal Bharadwaj, and is also developing a feature film with a leading production house. Ma'am, we are so glad to have you here with us today. Welcome to Extraordinaire 2022. Please take a seat.
Welcome to the session now. Since today we are in a conversation about consumer revolution, and as we've seen that a lot of the audience in the recent times have shifted from theaters, they have shifted to OTT platforms, they have shifted to Netflix, Amazon Prime. Now, since these OTT platforms offer a lot of potential for people to tell their stories, maybe the stories that are not dominant. But now, in the process of finding voices, we have also seen that we are catering to a certain audience which is very impatient. So, ma'am, what do you feel about this? Has the business of the craft taken away from the creativity of the craft?
I wouldn't put it as harshly as that. I think it hasn't taken away from the creativity, but it's definitely made it a lot more challenging like how I was talking about engagement with the audience when it comes to even things like a 10-second ad is also challenging. So to keep them engaged for 8 episodes, practically 7 hours, yeah, it's definitely gotten a lot more challenging. But at the same time, I think there's also so much more opportunity for different kinds of voices to find their place. So I think we're living in a sort of a strange, dichotomic sort of a situation where there's so much opportunity and there's also so much obstacle in terms of censorship, self-censorship, the business angle of it, the commercial decisions that so very much override the creative needs. So it's a bit of a monster that everybody is trying to sort of hold by the horns. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Also, censorship is a very connected issue. I feel like there are lots of people who might not have the backing of production houses, but they do have really good content. Also, this writing for screen has changed very much over time. As in, once upon a time, it was just a few people, but now it has evolved into being a writer's room.
This is not working. Should I just take this off? Is this better? Awesome.
So we see that is this better, everyone? So we have seen that from the writer's room that go into creation of content, it has now become a very diverse group of people. There are lots of people in a singular room when you're talking about a particular series. So how do you think this contributes maybe to a series? Does it make it more representational? Does it make it better? Does the story get better in the process?
That should ideally be the case, I think. See, it's sort of functional as well as well-intentioned to have a lot of people come into the process of writing, because it's 8 hours of content or 7.5 hours of content. It's not possible for one person to write it in a certain given time. So there's obviously a functional reason for rooms as well, because then there are more hands and therefore the work is getting done faster. But also there is this whole idea of making the content a lot more richer in terms of the many experiences, life experiences that the various writers bring in. To be a little bit, to sort of take this whole thing with a pinch of salt, because it all sounds very nice that, we are all sitting in Bombay writing these well-intentioned series, trying to represent everybody and every voice. That's not the case. Many times the writers' rooms are simply, sort of factories where everybody has been given their, collar tum banao, sleeves tum banao wala situation. Of course, it's not true that all writers' rooms are like that, but again, like I said, the business of it is in our country growing so quickly, and also there is so much more subscriber base that people are wanting to grab. All OTT platforms want that with the next show that they release, their subscriber base should jump. So, which is why the risks are even, when OTT had come, when it had just come, we felt, oh great, there's no censorship, and there's so much more that one can do with, and I don't mean to sound cynical, guys, because I am benefiting from the OTT like majorly. So it's not that there aren't opportunities, but there's also this sort of a, just to be mindful that this is happening, that because the intention is not to give writers and content creators the platform to say their stories. The intention is to get subscribers. Now, the challenge is on the content creator to ensure that the way they create the content brings in the subscribers. You can't be like, ye to meri kahani hai, I will be saying it, without understanding the at least the basics of how the business functions. I'm not saying be a sellout, please don't think that I'm asking you to be a sellout, but if, screenwriting is not novel writing, although novel writing also has a certain commercial aspect to it, but screenwriting is a very interactive, audience engagement oriented craft. You're writing so that your piece of writing, while it is the most important element in filmmaking, is a blueprint on which a film or a series will get made. So, while it is an important blueprint, you're working towards the end of getting more and more audiences to watch it. So, like I said, and I don't want to repeat it, but I'm saying that the challenge here is to understand that this is being made for commercial consumer, this is being made for commercial consumption, and in that you find what it is that you want to say or express creatively, find your stories, etc. So, the good thing is that the OTT does allow for a lot more of a varied writing and viewing experience, creating and viewing experience. We are experimenting a lot more with what it is that we want to say. I think now the next step is say it, in a lot more of a superior craft. Let the superior craft sort of show in that writing and making and all of that. So I think we also must understand that while, for example, all my peers and me, we look at international content as inspiration. And by inspiration, I don't mean to copy, but to genuinely be inspired by. Like, I'll watch series which have dropped and everybody's talking about it, which has won awards. I'll watch a Succession, and I maybe will not watch an Indian series which has recently just dropped until somebody said really good things about it. But that's because they are a little ahead of us in terms of craft, and for me the intention is to learn from how they've done it. But now I think the next step with this whole idea of being able to explore subjects is to make sure that what we create is now not only different and craft-wise superior, but also commercially viable for the people who are putting money in it. They are not in this business to put money into where your ideas are. They are here because they want to make money. So you have to, as a creator, find that sort of middle ground, I think, where you don't lose your voice, but you also don't lose their money. So yeah.
Ma'am, that's a very good answer. Well, so when you talk about writing for Indian audiences and how there are quite a lot, as you mentioned, Succession. So, ma'am, how are international series like these, the ones that are very popular right now, maybe because Sacred Games got really popular. There was a huge viewership for that. So, ma'am, that is perhaps because Sacred Games as a genre was a very new kind of content that India was getting exposed to. So, ma'am, how do you compare a series like Sacred Games, perhaps, how it has been made, how it has been tailored to the Indian audience, as compared to maybe a series like Succession?
Compare as in, how do you mean compare?
As
In terms
how it
of
has been
quality?
made, how it has been written.
No, of course not. And that is the entire idea, that if we were, like sometimes I get a lot of calls saying that we want to remake, we want to, like, not remake, but we want to make a show like Succession, or we want to make a show like XYZ, which is really done well outside. The whole point of me wanting to write is to be able to tell stories which are rooted in my world or in my life experiences, or at least in the newspapers that I read, about the world that I have that I'm seeing around me. So I need to make that comment on the world that I've seen. Even if I were to make a series about, say a business family like tycoons, I would probably write it very differently from how a Succession has been written, because, our culture is very different. Like, the family dynamics would themselves be very different. So to sort of come back to your question on Sacred Games or any other show which is being written, see, the good part is that if you write a good show, like Sacred Games, I am told, was also consumed very widely internationally. Like, it kind of did really well, not only in India, but also jumped subscription numbers apparently internationally as well. So the idea is obviously not to target international or Indian audience, etc., but to tell the story with as much honesty as possible. Like, if you've decided to tell the story of a family, a business family which kind of came from a very small, modest background in Maharashtra or Gujarat, you are going to do the legwork and find out what their journey was like instead of aping or duplicating what Succession was like. So when you're writing any kind of story, it really, the characters tell you how to write it. And this sounds a bit like mumbo jumbo, kya bakwas kar rahi hai, but they tell you how to write it. You think of an idea, you think of a person, you sit down, like I'm chatting with Trina, I will chat with my character, look a little crazy to a third person, but I will try and understand what their story is. I'm simply, trying to find the best way to tell that character's story. And therefore, if the character is a character rooted in an Indian sort of a scenario, and even in India, there are so many sort of regions, there are so many conflicts, there are so many people, there are so many kinds of communities, minorities, majorities, all of that. So it all boils down to you telling the story in the most honest way possible to the character. So yeah.
So, ma'am, how do you approach writing a particular scene? As in, I think this is a very common question that most writers have. That if I have a scene in mind, how do I approach it? How do I write it? How do you write it, ma'am? As in, when we are talking about world building, so creating a story from scratch, something that will go on for a long period of time, maybe 8 seasons, 2 seasons.
So it needs a lot of background. It needs a lot of grounding. So ma'am, how do you approach that world building?
Which is why 4 people at least. No? But no, of course, there's lots of stuff. Like Craig Mazin has single-handedly created Chernobyl, so it's not impossible. But the thing is that you're too past to your question, really. The world building is something that you again do. Just see, guys, if any of you like seriously wants to be a screenwriter, please think 1,000 times. It's a really lonely job. Even when you're in a writer's room, after you've gone home to write, it's a lonely job. It's frustrating as as hell. So I'm saying that world building is something that takes place over time, over discussions, sometimes with your team if you're in a writer's room, and if you're doing it by yourself, then it basically is research. It's just sitting and thinking about what this character's journey will be. So world building also doesn't come in a day, in a month. Sometimes, if you're lucky, it'll come in like a couple of months maybe. But again, world building is an exercise. It is ongoing till your last draft of the screenplay. You will get one new idea. What if in this scene the character is not going to like a would-be restaurant, but has just happened to walk into a massage parlor? Everything changes. The minute you change the setting, everything changes. The nature of the scene changes. Maybe the end of the scene changes. So world building is such a vast sort of a topic that it really, to put it in a very simple 1 or 2 line answer, is that you just need to do your research. You need to sit with your character and see what it's going to be like. At the same time, there must also be a conscious effort. I mean, it's natural that you want to create a world which nobody has seen before. It's fresh, it's new. If you're a writer, you want to do that. You want to write something where people sit up and take notice कि अरे ये तो देखा नहीं है पहले कभी. So that will also come from what engages you or what excites you as a writer. If you are into if you're into anime, or if you're like a fan of thriller, if you or if you're into like gory slasher films, suppose you are commissioned the task of writing a love story, and if you're really honest, your first draft will probably be a slasher love story. I mean, that's new, right? That's world building, because it's coming from your unique perspective or your unique preference or interest. So world building comes from research, yes. It comes from the character, yes. But it also comes from somewhere inside you. What excites you? I've not seen the world of, like for example, we saw recently, we saw this. I can't remember the name right now, but we saw, yeah, for example, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Has everybody seen Marvelous Mrs. Maisel? That is a world that you knew existed, but you had never really seen those characters, you never really seen that world, right? So it must have come from a place of interest in that era maybe, or a place of interest in how did comedy actually come about. It must have come from a place of interest of who was the first female comedian. You know, the minute you ask that question, the world automatically opens up before you, and you just have to, you know, take your notebook and walk through the world, and you can say, oh, it's like a shopping sort of trip. You go into the supermarket. The minute you find the right door, you go into that supermarket, it's all on shelves. You have to pick up what are the things that work for your trolley. And then you go to the checkout counter, maybe checkout counter is your first draft maybe, or somebody else telling you this is shit, don't get so excited. And that happens a lot, guys. Huh? So your checkout counter is the person who's giving you feedback or approvals, or the not giving you approvals, telling you ye kya bakwas hai. So that's how world building, I don't know, this has become a little off the, you know, the example, but really that's what it is. You just have to sit patiently and wait for it to come to you, the world.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, as you talked about Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, ma'am, that was one of the, it was a very breakthrough series. Like everybody who watched that, the idea that a housewife could find such economic liberation all by herself by the means of comedy. So this character, since she's so interesting, ma'am, when women are written by women, usually there is a certain depth to that character which perhaps we have not seen very much in women written by men. Ma'am, but if we switch the perspective, if you are writing a male character, or if you are writing a character, ma'am, how do you approach this written by women concept? As in, what do you think you bring into the character? Something, a depth that you add specifically into the character.
I would so very much like to agree with you and say, yeah, I do that. But I don't think it's that. I think, yes, a lot of most of the female or women characters which are written by men seem to lack a sense of, they don't seem to be 3D. They don't seem to be real. They seem to be some either sanitized or completely, you know, sort of racy version of what they think women are, you know. And I don't want to take the names of those films which do that. But on the flip side, there are some men who write women characters beautifully, right? If you have seen a film called Tumhari Sulu, it has been written by a man, and it's beautiful because it understands the, you know, it's not even about a woman who's this ambitious character. It's not even like a chapak about a woman who went through an extraordinary experience in terms of an emotional turmoil. It's about a homemaker who falls asleep while peeling matar, you know, and then she decides कि अभी मेरे को आरजे बनने का मैं कर सकती है. So it doesn't really take very much to write a real character, male, female or otherwise, as long as you have sat down for 5 minutes and try to understand who this person is, as long as you've tried to not cut it out of a cardboard, the character, you've spent some time, you sort of try to figure out why is it that I'm feeling interested in her. The trouble is that a lot of the male writers are not interested. They think because of the nature of the history of our cinema has been as such, at least in the, I would say the 90s. Before that, I think in the 70s and 80s, we had fabulous women characters, you know, we had some great films and some great filmmakers. There is a beautiful film called Dastak, which I don't know how many people might have seen, by Rajinder Bedi, I think. It's got a lovely woman character, which is played by Rihanna Sultan. I don't know why I'm talking about that. But I'm saying that writing a woman or a man or any other character is only and only about making the effort to get to know your character. So I believe that if you are a sincere screenwriter and you want to do a good job, then you can write characters irrespective of gender. Have you guys seen The Great Indian Kitchen? I cannot think of a film which has explored a female experience better. Like in film, I can't think of another character which has, another film which is basically a better example of a great female or feminine or a woman experience. It has been written and directed by someone called Geo Baby, who's a man. So, I mean, if you guys have not seen it, drop this session and go home and watch that film. Like it is not only is it great cinema, it is also such a, it's as if like he's gone inside the body of that woman and lived that life for years and come up with the experiences. Like his nuancing is so sensitive and so real. So what I'm trying to say is that there are some men who are good writers and have made the effort to understand their characters. Tomorrow if Geo Baby writes about a man, I'm sure he'll spend equal effort on it. So it's really about effort, it's about the intention. Like I was saying, and I'm going to keep meandering guys, sorry. I was saying there was a time in between where in our films, or most of our films, the object of a female character was to be a clothes horse or to be an arm candy, and then after a point, dance well. So we have come from there to here, which is why, it continues to be a sort of a practice for many filmmakers. But is it changing? Yes, absolutely. Which is why we have films like The Great Indian Kitchen, we have films like Tumhari Sulu, we have a Chapak and a Razi. Also, I want to add here that, this is about the female gaze. But coming back to, sorry, the other part of your question about women writing better men characters than men writing women characters, yeah, we do. We just do because I think we experience the world a little differently from men, and that's not to blame all the men for all our troubles, but there is a certain emotional alertness, I think, that women sort of experience, whether they are writers or not, and that's just that's just our world, our life, and I can't find the words to explain it any further than this, but it's just I think I had read this somewhere that women basically write male characters that they wish they had in their lives, so I mean, yeah, that's it. But also I wanted to add to that about this whole thing about, women telling women's stories is a big thing. I don't know if, like there are these hashtags. Every time a woman filmmaker makes a film, there is a hashtag saying, oh, this is wonderful, and women telling women's stories. And I think it's high time, guys, that we got a seat on the table. So, of course. But, there's also this general feeling and misconception that women telling women's stories means कि अरे यार औरतों की दुखी पिक्चर होगी, कि acid attack के बारे में होगी, कि ये होगा, कि वो होगा. But see, again I'm saying that the whole idea of women telling women's stories is to tell all kinds of stories. Men don't only do men in dukhi situations, no? We're not only watching Kabir Singh all the time. We're watching many kinds of films about many kinds of men. And here, that's exactly it. Like, for example, we may debate on whether we liked the film or we didn't like the film, but Darlings has just come out, and Darlings is a comedy about a woman who's suffering from domestic violence. Dude, if that is not perspective, then I don't know what is, So here we are, while again that is also a serious subject, I have just come out of a draft of a, like a thriller comedy about women. Like there are some 3 women in the center of this thriller comedy and they're dealing with something that is happening. It's not on any issue. It's not on, domestic violence. It's not on eve teasing. It's not on, it's not about rape. So I'm saying that there is this misconception and people don't sometimes want to invest, like also, women's centric cinema or women centric films don't get the same kind of budgets that, A-lister male stars do. So that's because again, they think that it's a very niche audience oriented cinema because औरतों की picture है, कुछ तो रोना धोना होगा, sort of a thing. The idea here is to change that narrative. When women are telling women's stories, they're not only telling sob stories because women are happy creatures. And they can be if you let us, even if you don't let us. So I'm saying that, we have, there's so many girls here and hopefully some of you want to be screenwriters. The whole idea here is to find a story that excites you. It doesn't matter if it's about a woman or a man or, some other gender. Here the idea is to find a story that excites you and then find a way to make it bloody commercially viable if that is your intention. If you want to make an independent film, that's great. But the idea is to tell the story with the most honesty and responsibility, but not like for the sake of, oh, मेरे को औरतों की picture बनानी है तो दुखी ही होगी. That is something that really irks me, although you didn't ask.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, also, when you talk about writing a well-written character, so it takes a lot of research, as you said. Ma'am, what about characters like the ones in Sacred Games? These are not characters that we directly interact with from our day-to-day life.
I hope not.
But they do exist. And writing a character like that, there is a lot of, there is an accuracy involved, but there is also a sensitivity involved in writing a character like that. So how does somebody, maybe you, how do you approach a character like that? Somebody who's so far away from your normal, how do you approach a character like that?
So, again, if you are writing a film about a murderer, you don't necessarily have to personally know a murderer, right? Human emotions are very universal no matter where you fit them, which is probably why you engage with a piece of content which is so far removed from your world, but it's hitting the same emotional chords somewhere in your body. So that is something that one kind of, keeps in mind when they are trying to find characters or develop characters. Research, most definitely. We went and met a public prosecutor. We had an excellent research consultant on Sacred Games, and she took us. She's a journalist who works the crime beat, and she took us to meet police officers, and she took us to meet a public prosecutor. She took us to the court when there was a hearing going on about a case, a terrorism case. So we went to all these places. We spoke to a police officer who was there on the night that 26/11 happened. So I'm saying that the exciting part about developing characters that you're not familiar with is the unfamiliarity of the world, which then you sort of try and familiarize yourself with by doing research, reading up on it, watching other content which may or may not have sort of delved into these worlds, etc. But at the same time, human emotion is something that we all sort of instinctively know. So if I know that a character has been sort of abandoned in her childhood, I can imagine, even though I have not been abandoned as a child, I can imagine the kind of fear and the kind of, the kind of result that would have. I could either be like this great saint, or I could be like I could be a psychopath or a sociopath, which Kalki's character sort of is. Although, unfortunately, there isn't too much about her backstory in Sacred Games too, but we had written an entire, a sequence which we couldn't shoot. But yeah, so these, she's half Israeli And you know, like she's born of a lot of conflict. So while I obviously don't know anybody like that, I can understand the emotion of being born in a lot of conflict by looking around, by reading up, by just imagining. So yeah, that's how I develop characters is, again, sit quietly, wait for them to talk to me. That, I'm sorry guys, it's not helping, I know, but that's just how it's done. Like you really need to live with your ideas. You need to let them get under your skin, whether it's writing a scene even. I think you asked the scene question before and I didn't answer it. If you have seen Sacred Games 2, then there's a scene, there's a lynching scene in one episode which I had written. And if you've not seen it, it's too late. I don't care about spoilers. I don't think you're going to watch it now. So, the lynching scene is something that I really had a tough time writing. If you watch the scene, there's no dialogue there. And you would imagine that isme kya hi likha hoga, because there's the action director, there's the director, all of that is happening. But if you do remember the scene, then whatever is happening, every beat has been written in the screenplay. Because it was a very important point at which Saif's character, Sartaj's character, sort of flips, like he has this sort of a teetering moment. So that was a very difficult scene to write for obvious reasons. And I took 4 days only to write that one scene. Like I watched some horrifying videos. My research consultant, I called her some 4 times a day and I was like, I don't know how to write this, etc. Yeah, at one point I had to allow it to sort of, I had to become even those people who were lynching the boy. I had to become that person for it to ring true, because when I wrote it out, the director called me and we had a discussion about the scene and he said, I'm not going to touch this scene, like we'll just go and shoot it, because it was an emotional sort of a experience to have written that scene, but the only way to write either this or any kind of scene is really just to be in like, for example, if 4 people are fighting. You guys remember that scene in Kapoor and Sons where the family is fighting and there's the plumber and all of that? I think it's one of the best scenes that we've seen in recent, in Indian film. So, how do you think Shakun would have written that scene? Like, there's no way to have written that scene unless you're sitting in one corner and watching all these people do what they're doing and just like lose their shit. I think it was a masterstroke to bring that plumber into that scene. I don't think that plumber would have come in the first draft of the scene. So while the 4 of them I'm imagining I would have maybe done it like the way that the 4 of them are sitting at the dining table and an argument breaks out and everybody talks one after the other. But do you fight like that? You want the other person to just shut up. You talk over that person. Maybe in the second draft, you do that. Because when you read the scene, you're like, theek hai, all the characters are saying all the right things. But emotionally, it's not like, it's supposed to explode. This is the point in the screenplay where things are supposed to explode. How are they going to explode if they're fighting so respectfully? Nobody fights respectfully. Do you talk to your parents like the way, I'm talking to you or, she's talking to me? No. When you're having a fight, you just lose your shit, and that's what must have happened in the second draft. In the third draft, he must have thought, no, I need to create more chaos because I need to create this frustration that I want to abuse my family, but I can't. And why can't I? Because there's an outsider sitting right here. No matter how much I'm shouting, I can't abuse my father because there is an outsider. Maybe that's when the plumber would have come in. So when you're writing a scene, the only way to get to the rhythm of the scene is by just being in the scene. You have to act it out. Maybe you're a terrible actor. Just shut the door and act it out, and that's when the best scene comes out. It's really just that. That wasn't your question.
Oh, ma'am, it was. I think. Ma'am, so being a writer is more than just a draft. It is about directing it yourself. It's about imagining yourself as the character, and also about basically acting it out first in your head.
And then letting it go. and then you have to let it go. You have to basically let other people take care of your baby. Because you're a writer, and after the draft has been approved, it's not yours, guys. Nobody, how many writers do you know? Nobody knows. Director, actor. That's how it, I mean, you know, it's not like it's anybody's fault, but that's how it functions, because you are the mother and director is father. Patriarchy is what it is. You know, you have like taken the pains and brought this child out, and that child's surname is not yours. I mean, at least for most people. I hope that changes more. But I think an essential part of screenwriting is two things actually. One is that you've written a great scene, but it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit in the screenplay. So what you know, when I was studying screenwriting, we were taught that you have to learn how to kill your best babies. So if you have written a great scene, but it doesn't fit in, if it's slowing the film down and it's not giving any new or relevant information, that scene needs to go. And that's your baby. You're like, you fight. I've fought for many scenes. Many scenes. I've fought with Anurag, I've fought with Vikram. I've begged. I have literally begged them saying, you can't delete this scene. And they're like, only you know that this scene was there once it's removed. It's true. Nobody missed it. Nobody thought there was a jump. So that was also a learning. So one thing that you have to learn as a writer is to kill your best babies. And the second is to trust whoever it is that is making the film to make it to the best of their ability. And you have to, even if you don't agree with their vision, you have to accept the chair, the authority of the chair, because the film doesn't belong. The script is yours. The film is the director's. That's how it should be also. Yeah.
Ma'am, so since you have killed quite a lot of scenes, and since these are one of your learnings, ma'am, what would be ideally some of the advice that you would like to give to aspiring screenwriters who might be in the audience?
Run for your life, do something else. It's frustrating. No, I don't mean that. I love what I do. I hate it, but I love it. So you want me to give advice to?
Yes, ma'am. Something that they could carry forwards perhaps when they are writing.
Right. The problem with all of us writers is that we don't write. You know, like carpenters, what do? They work with wood. Plumbers work with, you know. What do writers do? They waste time. They waste so much time. Just please, if you are gainfully employed, of course you will write. See, you know, the thing is that nobody, like, I think somebody was asking about a creative block when Anita was on. Somebody said creative block. Listen, if there is a paycheck at the end of whatever you have to submit, you won't get any blocks. There'll be no blocks. I promise you. I mean, at least that's what happens to me. But, you know, the thing is that so many times we wait for opportunities to come to us, but actually our work, for example, cinematographers can't work without equipment. Editors sometimes also need a certain kind of equipment which they don't have. Directors, of course, can't direct because, you know, it's just not being shot. But writers have this great boon that they don't need anything to have written material. So if you have commissioned work, if you get commissioned work, that of course is great. But also please continue to hone, you know, like you have to develop your craft. You have to, and the only way to get better at writing is to write more. You'll write one draft, you'll be like, I'm so great, I'm like the next Charlie Kaufman. 3 weeks later, you will read it and you'll be like, shit, I should just bury my head in like one nully. Like, believe me, and if that's not happening to you, there's a problem, guys. If you like what you've written, you know, 3 years later, you've not grown, you know, you've really not. So I think keep writing, even if you don't have commissioned work, you should keep writing, because that's, you know, it may or may not get made. Like I was telling somebody that the strike rate of spec projects is what you have written on your own and then taken to a production house or a director saying, can you please make this? And they said, yeah, we love it, we'll make it. That conversion rate is unfortunately very low in the industry right now. It happens very, very rarely. But what does happen is that they'll read your material and they'll be like, we don't want to make this for whatever XYZ reason, but we like what you've written. So that becomes your calling card. It becomes your, portfolio, as they say. And that's when you'll be put in a writer's room saying that, okay, you be the writer's room assistant, or you be, like the fourth writer, write only a small part. But that's how one sort of gets the opportunities, right? Nobody starts out writing. Some people do, you're not the lucky ones. But yeah, so my advice is to keep writing. Even if you don't have commission work, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. It sounds like I'm sitting here one lecture. I'm struggling with it even today myself. Writing on spec on your own is very difficult, but find the motivation, and that I think will really help. The other thing is, develop a bloody thick skin. Very, very thick skin. You are going to be rejected. Like, again, as Anita was saying, that, out of 10 things, 5 things don't convert. In screenwriting, you will have, when you have certain contacts, when you've made certain contacts, you will have maybe, 10 meetings. Out of that, 2 meetings will convert into, commission projects. If you have 5 commission projects, none of them will convert. 10 में से एक शायद बनेगा. I have an entirely written show with someone which 10 days away from starting casting, they said, you know what, we are not going to make this now. Whatever their reason may have been. So writing is at the very beginning of the filmmaking stage or the production stage. So many times you do your entire work and it doesn't get made. So the frustration levels are very high, very, very high. So you have to sort of have that thick skin and ride this frustration out of ki kuch ho nahi raha hai, because it's so out of your hands. You are such a, you're only the writer who has written. After that, there is so much more in terms of who the actor is going to be, whether they're able to cast it, whether they've got the money to produce it, because writing is a very small part of the budget and they may or may not have given you money and gotten it written. The other thing is, thick skin, I also say, is because there's going to be insane amount of rejection of work, of your babies. Insane amount. And rejection, very unkind rejection. Unkind. You have put like months of hard work, you have put your personal life experience, like what one moment, beautiful moment you shared with your boyfriend, you've put that in. They've read it and they've thrown it in your face saying, maja nahi aaya. Yeah. And maza nahi aaya is not feedback, guys. It's not like, ki, oh, matlab, I'll go and fix it. Kaise maza aayega usko? How I know? I don't know. But it happens, you have to deal with it. Now I think a lot of production houses, a lot of OTT platforms are sort of coming up with formats of feedback. So at least they are not saying maza nahi aaya. But sometimes even what they put in it is, it's just better English for maza nahi aaya. And you have to deal with it. You have to figure out how to sort of battle it by either giving them options and figuring out what they want. When you're new and when you're starting out and you're not have too much experience, then that's what you have to do. You just have to keep writing till people are happy, which is never. So you have to keep writing forever. But yeah, when you come to a certain stage where you're able to maybe have those conversations and say, tell me. Because, or then, you ask for terms where every time you write a draft, it's more money. Then they'll find the words. Then it won't be maza nahi aaya. So you have to basically, climb up the food chain, really, so to speak. And like I said, feedback is very, very important. You have to learn to understand feedback. There are some people who will give you feedback and it'll be nasty feedback, and it'll be also useless. But there's some people who will give you genuine feedback, and you have to be able to learn the difference between the two. Like you have to be able to say, ki, yeah, she's right. If I do this or if I remove this, it'll make my script better. Feedback, all good writing is rewriting. Only Salim Javed have written their scripts in 20 days and gotten it made and made it into like one blockbuster. Only them. All good screenplays are many drafts, many drafts. So yeah, like I said, it's very frustrating. But when you actually have something written and then it translates and you see people saying your lines, crying your tears. It's such a high that all of this then, only for that one moment, becomes worth it. So yeah, I mean, it's extremely gratifying, but it's also extremely frustrating. I don't mean to sound cynical, sir, but it's just something that takes genuine love to do. And yeah, but if you find that love, then yeah, that's one thing. Another, very important thing which I think a lot of new writers sort of sometimes don't have the option to do is to understand your legal rights. You have to understand how, at least the basics of how copyright law works. You have to understand what are the industry practices, because writers are exploited a lot by a lot of, people in the industry in terms of the terms, because what happens is it's not costing anybody any money to get you to write draft after draft, or to get you to write something and then present it to a production house or a OTT platform or even a star as their own work, So you have to understand how is it that you can protect yourself. There is a trade union called the Screenwriters Association, where you can register your work, your own work, so that there is some proof that you are the owner of the copyright of that work. And there is, of course, many other things which, I can share details with whoever's genuinely interested. But please, if you are serious about screenwriting, do understand how the law functions around copyright. What are the plagiarism, what counts as plagiarism? How can you protect yourself against it? I feel like new writers don't understand that. They don't understand contracts. You sign a contract and you've given away everything without you getting money or credit. I've signed a lot of shitty contracts in my time. Lot of them. So do try to, see, the thing is, you may not be able to negotiate a good contract for the first couple of years, but you will know that you're giving away stuff. Be aware of what is happening, so that the minute they like your work, in your next contract, they'll be like, हाँ, ये तूने अच्छा काम किया है, do this. In your next contract, you can say, यार, but sir, इसमें payment तो थोड़ा जल्दी आना चाहिए. You have to be aware of what it is that where you're being exploited. That much you need to know, at least in the beginning. So yeah, and also, like I said, coming back to feedback, I think it's, for me personally, it's very important to surround myself with like a safe circle whose feedback I trust, who will give me feedback for my own script, for the betterment of the script. So try and find those people. And also, last thing, don't think that you know screenwriting, because you don't. Nobody knows. Charlie Kaufman doesn't know. Nobody knows. It's just this, again, it sounds a bit, like I've smoked up something or something, but screenwriting is like, I feel like it's a lot like meditation. The more you do it, the more, the more you feel like you don't know anything. So be prepared for like that lifelong journey of self-doubt, self-hatred, and all of that.
Thank you, ma'am.
That was lots of advice, guys. Now at least one of you should become a screenwriter, please. Just for this one session.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, we will be taking a few questions from the audience. So anybody who has a question? Okay, lots of them. Microphone, please.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Deep from PG first year. I actually have a lot of questions, but I think I have to pass the mic around.
I have talked so much, still you have lots of questions.
Yes, because of the talk also I have a lot more questions. So one of the questions that I've had for a while is, whenever I'm writing a character, my voice tends to become the voice of the character. And that becomes a problem when there are multiple characters involved. So how do I as an actor, writer.
Freudian slip.
No. How do I myself as a writer stop that voice from going into all those characters? Because it will then be a version of myself speaking to each other, and it will be the same voice going around the room.
That's a great question, and it's something that I struggle with all the time. Like, I've recently done dialogue for the remake of a Tamil film for which they're making a Hindi film, and that was a struggle because there's already a film made, and you know there's a certain, like I've watched the film, I know what it's like. So even there's a short film that I've made which is basically you know, about two women. One is, you know, like a slightly more privileged class, and the other is a house help. But they work in the same sort of, you know, zone, like they're in the same room all the time, etc. So this is a very constant and continuous challenge, and I think the only way to do it is, like I said, to, when you're writing it, to two, three things. First, figure out who this person is. Like if I am a certain person who's come with a certain background, a certain backstory, you may or may not have been given that story, or you may or may not have developed it yourself. Like when I'm doing the dialogue, I was not given the backstory for some of the people, right? When I was doing only the dialogue. But I figured that if this person is here, if he's an Udupi restaurant owner, then these are his thoughts. Like this is what he will worry about. He's a very minor character in the film that I wrote. But, you know, then I wrote the right lines that I wrote seem to be sort of coming from a place of what his mindset will be. He's walking around the Udupi restaurant looking at how, if everybody's plates are clean and all that, and then one person says ki aapka to bahut acha bana hai. So if I am that person who, a very polished kind of a person, is telling me ki bahut acha aapka khana banta hai, I'll be a little shy. I'll blush maybe or whatever, or I'll be like, nahi, kuch nahi, aisa, you know. So I'm saying that you have to become that person, even if it's a one-line character in your script. For that one line, you have to become that person and think of his entire life. Immediately, it will not be you, it will be this guy, right? So when there are 4 or 5 people, like I love films where, you know, it's like they're called chamber films really, where, you know, it takes place in one room or one location, like the Before series, you know, Before Sunrise, Before Sunset. If you've not watched it, please watch it. So it's just 2 people talking, right? It's so difficult to keep somebody engaged for 2 hours while they're just talking. But it's because I know so much about my characters, is that I can make their conversation so true and so honest that it becomes engaging. It doesn't always have to be interesting, mind you. It doesn't have to be always funny or entertaining. It has to be something that I am engaged with. Even if they're telling me about a childhood trauma, you know, it's something that I get interested in. If Julie Delpy's character has had a childhood trauma or has a certain kind of a relationship with her grandmother, which you have worked into the backstory, automatically it'll come into the dialogue, because she's meeting a guy, she'll tell him, you know, important things about herself because she likes him. So these are things which are actually so instinctive that if you have spent enough time and effort on your characters, they become, after 2 or 3 things that you write, they become almost second nature to you. But also, having said that, in terms of the voices of the characters in their lines and the way they talk, you know, like there's one woman who's short-tempered. What happens is, a lot of times women are so used to repressing, you know, their displeasure, that you'll always see a woman character constantly shouting at her help, because she can't shout at anybody else. Or she'll shout at her kids, she'll hit her kids. You know, now this is a character insight, because you know something about the character and her relationship maybe with her mother or her father or her father-in-law or her husband, all of that. Maybe that's not part of the story. Maybe the story is about this mother and child, and it's the child's story. That, you know, this child's mother is constantly hitting her. That is the story. But the mother's voice will not be you, because you have created a backstory of the mother. That's... Yeah.
One more question. For short films, usually, I mean, at an amateur level, so what ends up happening is a short film is a bunch of moments woven together compared to like a completely flowing story. For example, if I'm writing, I think, okay, this is a moment that I want should happen, and then I start weaving things around that. But due to that, what ends up happening is my characters aren't fleshed out characters, because I just have 5 minutes to show that, run that story, and I'm focusing on the moment, and I'm unable to create a character that's extremely fleshed out and human, to say, rather than just being a prototype that I've just placed in that situation. So So how do I go about fleshing a character in a
You
short
flesh a character like you're writing a feature film. Spend that time. Don't think that because the film is 5 minutes, I'll spend only 20 minutes on it, on the character. You know, you flesh your character out. See, you have had a lifetime of experience, right? And one time when you were coming here to the institute, again, I'm just saying, on the train you met this lovely girl, okay? And you only had a 5-minute interaction with her, girl, boy, whoever. You had a lovely 5-minute interaction with her, him, you know, and it was extremely electrically charged, romantic, etc. And you are making a film only on those 5 minutes of your life, right? But if you know about yourself for the entire life, you will find a way to make those 5 minutes count. So it's not about the duration. It's not because it's a short film, I don't have time. Half a second is enough. One look is enough to tell you something about the character. If you watch films, like Hitchcock, we were talking about Hitchcock. If you watch Two Strangers on a Train, the first 5 or 10 minutes tell you everything that you need to know about the two characters. Of course, there are more layers which, sort of get revealed more and more. But if you watch the film, for the first 5 minutes, Little Miss Sunshine, have you seen Little Miss Sunshine? You must watch Little Miss Sunshine. You know, there is an exposition sequence where there are some 5 or 6 important characters. You see each of those characters for like all of maybe 20 or 30 seconds each. You know everything you need to know about those characters. So it's not about time, it's about how you express what you know.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Deep. Ma'am, because of the shortage of time, we will not be taking any more questions for this session.
I'm so sorry about that. Did I just ramble
No,
on?
ma'am, not at all. Not at all. But for any other questions, ma'am, maybe we could share a contact with them so that they could get back to you with questions. Is that okay? So we'll do that. We'll share an email.
I'm terribly sorry about this, guys. I think I just rambled on forever
Not at
and ever.
Not at all, ma'am. It was such a pleasure to have you, ma'am. It was
Thank
so
you.
great.
Thank you. It was great being here.
I hope it's been a fruitful experience for everyone in the audience as well. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
For the next session, we will take a slight 15-minute break and get back at 3:15. Thank you.